Chicago. Live from Chicago's news team. This is the Channel 2 Weekend News.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas.
And I'm Mike Parker. We've got a top flight visitor in Chicago tonight, President Vytautas Landsbergis of Lithuania. He'll be spending the next 5 days here. Several thousand Lithuanian Americans went to Midway Airport today to greet the president. Governor Edgar and Senator Dixon were also on hand to welcome Landsbergis to Illinois. The president spoke briefly to the crowd and talked about his recent meeting with President Bush at the White House.
Your president said, America is with you. America stands by.
Landsbergis is in this country seeking support for Lithuania's bid for independence from the Soviet Union. And Chicago is home to the largest Lithuanian-American community outside Lithuania.
Channel 2, WBBM Television, Chicago.
Live from Chicago's news team. Channel 2's Weekend News.
Good evening, I'm Mike Parker.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas. A plea for help tonight from a special visitor from Lithuania. President Vytautas Landsbergis is in Chicago and will be spending the next 5 days here lining up support for his troubled homeland. Several thousand Lithuanian Americans went to Midway Airport this afternoon to greet the president. Governor Edgar and Senator Dixon were also on hand to welcome Mr. Landsbergis to Illinois. The president spoke briefly to the crowd and talked about his recent meeting with President Bush at the White House.
Your president said, America is with you. America stands by.
Landsbergis is in this country to garner support for Lithuania's bid for independence from the Soviet Union, and Chicago is home to the largest Lithuanian-American community outside of Lithuania.
This is Channel 5, your 24-hour news source.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie Bang.
And I'm Art Norman. With more Lithuanian Americans than any other city, Chicago was a fitting host today to welcome the president of that country. Channel 5's Charlie Wojciechowski filed this story earlier today.
With a welcoming chant of Lietuva, Lietuva, Lithuania, Lithuania, President Vytautas Landsbergis arrived in Chicago. Governor Jim Edgar joined with more than 2,000 Lithuanian Americans in greeting the president at Midway Airport, with banners denouncing the Soviet domination of their homeland and songs rejoicing its hope for independence. Landsbergis is looking for the same kind of financial assistance that many Eastern European leaders are. But more than anything else, he'd like the United States to officially recognize his country's independence from the Soviet Union. U.S. Senator Alan Dixon stopped just short of calling for that recognition in welcoming Landsbergis to Chicago.
We do not recognize the Soviets' forced incorporation of the Baltic states. We never have, and we never will.
Landsbergis started his 5-day U.S. trip in Washington with a 3+1 summit involving President Bush and other Baltic leaders. Today he called for a second summit, this time with Mikhail Gorbachev.
And it would be a good example for another summit, 3+1 in East.
President Landsbergis will spend the next few days meeting with political, business, and religious leaders in Chicago. He came here seeking support for his nation's peaceful revolution because Chicago has the largest population of Lithuanian descent of any city in North America. Charlie Wojciechowski, Channel 5 News.
President Landsbergis also received an honorary law degree today from DePaul University.
This is Channel 5, your 24-hour news source.
Lithuania's president is getting a warm welcome from Chicagoans. More than 2,000 Lithuanian Americans chanted, sang, and waved freedom signs as President Vytautas Landsbergis arrived at Midway Airport. He wants the U.S. to support Baltic independence from the Soviet Union, possibly in a three-way summit conference with Mikhail Gorbachev.
Tonight. And it would be a good example for another summit, 3+1 in East.
Landsbergis also received an honorary law degree from Loyola University.
This is Eyewitness News with Sylvia Perez and Jim Rosenfield. Andy Avalos with weather. Brad Palmer with sports. And the Eyewitness News team.
The president of Lithuania is in Chicago tonight, the first day of a 5-day visit. Vytautas Landsbergis is trying to get economic help for his nation. As Bob Petty reports, this area is of great importance to Lithuania.
At the Lithuanian Museum on Chicago's southwest side, preparations to meet their homeland's president began early. For the young, it was a day of dressing up and enjoying the festive atmosphere created by the visit. For their elders, it was a time of discussion and reflection of the way they remember home compared to recent changes and the revolution to restore independence.
Our president represents the freedom of the nations. The Lithuania is very similar than Kuwait. American fights, American died for that. It's very, very similar.
Hundreds of Lithuanians were at Midway Airport to meet the man leading the revolution. The singing revolution it is called because in the face of Russian tanks, they joined hands and sang. The nation's president, President Landsbergis, was met by Governor Jim Edgar and Illinois Democratic Senator Alan Dixon. The president is here in Chicago seeking economic help, investors, and trade deals for his troubled country.
We'd be more than open to increase trade between Illinois and Lithuania.
Senator Dixon praised the Lithuanians for their courage. Finally, President Landsbergis spoke to his fellow Lithuanians and expressed his thanks to Chicago.
We are very happy to visit this great city of America and great city of Lithuanians.
One of the reasons this presidential visit is so important is that leaders of that nation feels that once the government of America gives that country official recognition, then freedom from Soviet domination and rule is certain to come quicker. At Midway Airport, Bob Petty, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And President Landsbergis met with President Bush in Washington before coming to Chicago.
This is Eyewitness News with Jim Rosenfield and Sylvia Perez. Andy Avalos with weather. Brad Palmer with sports. And the Eyewitness News team. This is Eyewitness News.
The man credited with leading Lithuania's drive for freedom is in Chicago tonight trying to help his homeland. Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis will be here for several days making economic and business contacts. Tomorrow, he will attend church services, a wreath-laying ceremony, and a song festival. Today, hundreds of Chicago Lithuanians greeted President Landsbergis at Midway Airport. Governor Edgar and Senator Dixon joined the crowd with an enthusiastic welcome.
We are very happy to visit this great city of America and great city of Lithuania.
And other foreign dignitaries also in Chicago this weekend. Crown Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia arrived today for a similar visit.
Chicago's very own 9 o'clock news.
Lithuanian President Landsbergis is in Chicago tonight, home of the largest Lithuanian population outside that Soviet republic. He's here to garner support for his country's struggling independence movement. Governor Edgar was on hand to give Landsbergis an official Chicago welcome, along with thousands of Lithuanian Americans. Later on, Landsbergis received an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Loyola University. The Lithuanian leader is the founder of the reform movement that ousted the Communist Party from power. An exiled Crown Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia also is in Chicago. He's seeking help to restore democracy to Yugoslavia, which has been communist since 1945. His father, King Peter II, is buried in suburban Libertyville.
From ABC News. This week with David Brinkley. Now, from our Washington headquarters, here's David Brinkley.
The Soviet Union is stable, more or less, at the moment. But its economy is a mess and getting worse. And several of its republics are still demanding independence. The Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and others. And like much of the world, the Soviet Union needs food. And it's asking the United States for another $1.5 billion in food credits. President Bush is thinking it over. However this turns out, what are the long-range prospects for the Russians and their empire? We'll ask today's guests. Vytautas Landsbergis, President of Lithuania, Ivars Godmanis, Prime Minister of Latvia, and our discussion here with Sam Donaldson, Cokie Roberts, and Tom Wicker, here on our Sunday program. President Landsbergis and Prime Minister Godmanis, thank you both very much for being with us today. Pleased to have you.
Yes, we are.
Here in the studio are Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts, both of ABC News. Now, Mr. Landsbergis, you first. Tell us, what exactly is the status of your relationship with the Soviet Union at the moment? You want to be out of the Soviet Union. They're unwilling. Where does it stand exactly?
Our status is the former annexed country and now proclaimed our re-established independence, but still with Soviet military forces in Lithuania and under danger of aggressive actions from Soviet side.
Mr. Godmanis, is your story the same?
We are practically in the transitional period, but I think so that now the transitional period will be soon over, because our parliament will pass a new legislative rule, and we are trying to start the serious negotiations with Moscow about the restoration of our independence de facto. The Europe, for 50 years, we are out of the Soviet Union.
Gentlemen, to the extent that you push for independence, it makes life considerably more difficult for President Gorbachev. If you have the effect of overthrowing him, doesn't that make life worse for you? If the reforms do not continue, isn't that worse for both of your countries?
If President Gorbachev is continuing the injustice and the aggressive politics of Stalin from 1940s, it's a problem for him. But if he wants to be a real Democrat and provide essential reforms and to create a state of law in the Soviet Union, he must resolve this problem of independence, Baltic states.
But will he be able to pursue those reforms if you insist on independence now?
We are going the way of essential reforms, and we must be independent state for that.
I just only add that this is not our business to involve in the internal affairs of the Soviet Union. It should be 9 or 10 or 5 republics who will sign the new Union Treaty, and due to this is not our business to overthrow Gorbachev. Our business is to restore our independence and to have very good economical and political relations with our neighbors in the East. And if Gorbachev will be on this way to understand our position, which is quite normal, and our parliamentary way to the independence, which are only democratic one, I think there's no problem about the Gorbachev.
Well, now, President Bush made it clear this week that he would like you to, as an American expression, cut Gorbachev some slack, which means, I suppose, that he would like you to ease up, not put so much pressure on Gorbachev that it would help overthrow him. Do you agree to do that? Do you agree, in effect, to ease up a little bit?
Yeah. You know, I've just already told that we are going to solve our internal problems, to start economical reforms which have been already started in Latvia, and we are going to start the negotiations in the highest level. It means with the President of USSR, Mr. Gorbachev, of our problem of independence. It's not the question of some tension. It's not the question of some forcible activities from our side.
President Landsbergis?
I am sure that it would be much less problems for President Gorbachev and Soviet leadership to go the way of sincere negotiations with Lithuania and other Baltic countries. And our independence would be a resolving of their problems, not creating the news.
Now, there has been bloodshed, particularly in Lithuania. Do you now foresee that the Soviet armed forces will be restrained, that in fact there will not be another bloody crackdown? Or do you fear that right-wingers gaining ascendancy in Moscow may order the army to go in and to crack heads?
Yes, it's very possible. Now someone can say that a recognition of our rights and goals and of our real statehood is nearing. But at the same time, the new crackdown is nearing. And the question is, who will be the first?
You're telling us that you fear that, what, the crackdown from the army, as ordered by Moscow, as ordered by army commanders, is nearing? And when you say nearing, can you put a time on it?
Yes, they are preparing for new strikes, perhaps more sophisticated than in January.
So I can only add that the situation will be more complex before the period of signing the new Unions Treaty, and a little time after. It should be that instead of the brutal, military, forcible aggression, we can also get some creeping economical blockade, and it will be more dangerous for our situation if we are being isolated from the both sides, that the western borders will be closed and the eastern borders also closed, and we will be asked to pay the hard currency for the whole resources which have been coming from the Soviet Union. And when we are speaking about the military activities, I just only said that they can crash, but they can't solve economical and political problems, not only in the Baltics, but also in other regions in the South, also in the other republics.
Now, we have one final question for you. You have met and talked with President Bush more than once. What is he saying to you in private? Mr. Landsbergis?
Ką jis man turėtų pasakyti? Ką jis pasakytų? Ar ką aš turėčiau pasakyti?
So I just only add from my side, if I have an opportunity to speak.
In private. It was not very private.
Well, what does
I would like to ask Mr. President Bush very privately of three things. We want to join in ideals of democracy with the United States. We are asking for protection from the non-democratic power of the communist empire. And we want to cooperate with the United States in enforcement of democracy on the eastern seashore of Baltics. Why not?
Mr. Godmanis, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, the very interesting thing what I've heard from Mr. Bush was that Mr. Bush has said it will be very useful and very politically comfortable if the three small Finlands, I mean Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, will be the good neighbors of the Russia, of the other republics. And the second thing which I think is very important, that we have to find out the mechanisms how to restore our independence de facto. And my opinion is that it's International Baltic Conference we have to be established, and the direct talks with the Gorbachev on the highest level. And Mr. Bush has said that when he will meet Mr. Gorbachev, he will speak very definitely about those things.
Well, thank you both very much for being with us. We've been happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
We wish you the best of luck.
Channel 2, WBBM Television, Chicago.
Live from Chicago's news team. Channel 2's Weekend News.
A cry for freedom tonight from Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis. The Lithuanian leader is in Chicago now and attended Mass this morning at the Nativity BVM Church on the southwest side. The church was packed, and Mr. Landsbergis received a standing ovation when he was introduced to the congregation. After the Mass, the president went outside and laid a wreath at the foot of a wooden cross, which represents the 15 Lithuanians who were killed in January by the Soviet Army. He then told reporters he needs more help from the United States to pressure the Soviet Union to grant freedom to Lithuania and the other two countries in the Baltic Republic.
We want this country to have a more active policy supporting Lithuania.
Later, Mr. Landsbergis was escorted down the aisle at Maria High School, where a rally was held in his honor. He listened to the crowded auditorium singing the Lithuanian national anthem. Many of the young people in the audience told us the president's visit here is very important to them.
I think it's fantastic because I think it will unite our communities here in the United States.
The president will be in Chicago for the next 3 days.
This is Channel 5, your 24-hour news source.
On the second day of his visit to Chicago, Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis called for the Soviets to recognize the independence of the Baltic states. During a network television interview, Landsbergis directed his appeal to Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev.
If you want to be a real Democrat and provide essential reforms and to create a state of law in the Soviet Union, he must resolve this problem of independence Baltic states.
President Landsbergis also appealed to President Bush, asking that the United States be willing to enforce the recognition of Baltic independence.
This is Eyewitness News with Jim Rosenfield and Sylvia Perez. Andy Avalos with weather, Brad Palmer with sports, and the Eyewitness News team.
Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis is calling on Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev to recognize the independence of the Baltic states. Landsbergis, interviewed in Chicago for This Week with David Brinkley, said Gorbachev must resolve his problem of independence if he wants to be a real Democrat. Later today, Landsbergis visited the Southside Church and told reporters he hopes his trip will raise American support for Lithuania's struggle for freedom.
We want this country to have a more active policy in supporting Lithuania in our crucial time.
Landsbergis laid a wreath at the foot of a cross representing 13 Lithuanians killed last January by Soviet soldiers. Landsbergis will meet with state and city officials during his five-day visit to Chicago.
Chicago's very own 9 o'clock news.
Good evening. Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis calls for Soviet President Gorbachev to recognize Baltic independence and tells his supporters in Chicago to turn up the heat. Good evening. I'm Robert Jordan.
And I'm Roseanne Tejas. The Lithuanian president wants out from under the Iron Curtain and today told Chicago's Lithuanian community he needs their support. His message is just what supporters needed to hear, as Joni Lum reports.
Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis arrived amid a sea of his homeland's flags and cheers in his native language.
People really need to see somebody up close, because when you fight when you have a cause and it's long distance, you need to have that personal contact to make it closer to you.
The Chicago Lithuanian community has been working to help Landsbergis restore the country's independence since Soviet troops stormed the capital in January. 14 unarmed people died in the confrontation. The president laid a wreath outside the Southwest Side Church in honor of those killed.
Many Americans of other origin are also with us. We want this country will have a more active policy in supporting Lithuania.
Landsbergis wants the United States to impose economic sanctions against the Soviet Union until that country agrees to independence talks with all of the Baltic states.
Congress has been very supportive of the emerging democratic movements in the Soviet Union and in the Baltic states, yet the president seems to have been stonewalling.
I think we just have to keep our hopes up and hope that one day things will just happen.
Later, hundreds of supporters got a chance to meet Landsbergis at a public rally. Some Lithuanian Americans admit that their energy has drained over the months, and it's been refueled by the president's visit. They say their enthusiasm might have wavered, but their hope for change will never die. On the southwest side, Joni Lund, WGN News.
Landsbergis will meet with government officials and religious and ethnic leaders during his next 3 days in Chicago.
Now for the 5:30 report, here's Walter Jacobson and Adele Arakawa.
The president of Lithuania, Vytautas Landsbergis, is in Chicago today and is giving a warning to President Bush. He says that if the U.S. does not help fight for freedom in the Baltic states of Eastern Europe, there will be endless suffering by millions of victims of Soviet repression. He is on a 4-day mission in Chicago to pressure the U.S. to force the Kremlin to remove its troops from Lithuania. I spent an hour with President Landsbergis this morning.
Justice must win, and my country will be independent and free. It's a question of time.
He says the Russian Black Berets are a terrible presence in Lithuania, and the stories from Vilnius leave no doubt. Apart from the violence, which has been curbed somewhat, the Russians have spoiled the landscape and destroyed the economy. For 50 years, the youth of Lithuania have been required to serve in the Soviet Army. Those who are now American have extraordinarily emotional ties to the homeland. There are 150,000 in the Chicago area, more than anywhere else in the world, outside the homeland. President Landsbergis is a professor of music who's written 9 books and speaks 5 languages. I asked him to do something for a few minutes that made him feel good. Are there American tunes popular songs in Lithuania now?
Some new, of course, but I'm not of this generation. Yeah.
Walter's also been an occupied elsewhere.
Yes, and other things more important in your life. Well, it's beautiful, and it's wonderful to be able to hear you do that. Thank you very much, Mr. President. He's 56 years old, a father of 3, grandfather of 6, a soft-spoken and very sensitive man. But he fought the Nazis and is hard as a rock in his determination to gain independence, or at least make the world consider it.
This is Channel 5, your 24-hour news source.
Good evening, I'm Carol Marine.
And I'm Ron Majors. Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis is winding up his 5-day visit to Chicago. Today he met with Mayor Daley, who expressed the city's concern over the Baltic states' struggle for independence from the Soviet Union. The mayor offered support and presented Landsbergis with a key to the city. In return, Landsbergis gave the mayor a painting of a medieval coat of arms depicting a knight on a horse.
Night is made possible in part by United Airlines. Come fly the friendly skies.